Mr. Darwin on the Beagle sailed the oceans and seas, to South America and Tahiti and New Zealand, Maldives, to Australia and Tasmania, Keeling Island and St. Helena, to Ascension and Mauritius and Brazil de Verde and the Galapagos Islands. Mr. Darwin on the Beagle sailed away for 5 years. Mr. Darwin on his journey watched the plants, beasts, and birds. He drew pictures, gathered samples, kept a journal full of words. Looked at beetles, finches, mockingbirds, giant tortoises, flightless cormorants, studied daisies, prickly poppies, climbers, cactuses, cassava, coconut, and cress. He wondered where they came from, and he soon had ideas. Mr. Darwin, when he got home, wrote his new ideas down, but he didn't like to offend, so didn't share them around. Many years passed. Mr. Darwin got a letter from a Mr. Wallace. Now this young man had discovered just the same thing Mr. Darwin found aboard the Beagle. Mr. Wallace had the self-same idea. Mr. Darwin and Mr. Wallace formed a team for some time. Then Mr. Darwin wrote his big book in 1859 on the origin of species by natural selection. Everybody read the book. Everybody had an opinion. Some people praised it, others damned it. Mr. Darwin's big book. Mr. Matthew was a gardener when he read Darwin's book. He wrote a letter to the paper saying, just take a look at the book I wrote nearly 30 years ago. I had all the same ideas, but Mr. Matthew and Mr. Wallace were forgotten over all the years, and now we just remember Mr. Darwin's big book. So now when you think about natural selection, do spare a thought for those forgotten too. Remember their names, just a brief recollection. Alfred Russel Wallace and Patrick Matthew.